Everybody. My name is Elizabeth Richards, and I am the CEO of Altum Healthcare Solutions. And we are here today for our webinar series, Deep Dive with Altum. And I am just really excited today because my friend and fellow CEO boss woman, Geneva Schlabach, is here today to have this conversation with me. She's an amazing person, a great leader, and I think that she's just going to have a lot of insight to give you guys today. And I'm going to participate with her. And so, without further ado, Geneva.
Thank you, Elizabeth. It is so good to be here with everyone today, and really excited just to spend some time with everyone, and just want to invite you into the conversation. We're going to be keeping it real today, and have a lot of respect for Elizabeth. And as a fellow CEO, it's always good to hear other people's stories and what it takes to start a company and to build it. And Elizabeth certainly is one of those people that I have a lot of admiration for. And so we're excited today to just talk a little bit more about the people when it comes to people, process, and technology. You know, we live in a time where everything is about, it's a huge tech revolution. And we live at a time where there's a lot of conversation around automation, technology, AI, and there's a lot of pressure being put on all of us from boards, leaders, and our industry to really embrace these things. And you know, the caution that I have with it, and I'm the CEO of a technology company, so people are always like, well, why aren't you talking about technology and why are you talking about people? And it's because people are still our single greatest asset. And in most companies, they also happen to be the most expensive asset. And so we are going to talk about those things today. And you know, we can have the best technology, we can have the best intentions, we can have, you know, the bots running in the background, we can have automations, even have machine learning models and AI working. But if we don't have the right people in the right place, we probably are going to fall short. And so that's what we want to talk about today. So I always say at Vispa, and I'll get Elizabeth in the conversation here shortly, but at Vispa, we are building two things. The first thing we are building is a culture built on a healthy family model that is excellent and unreasonably hospitable. And then we also build technology solutions for healthcare organizations. But for the sake of today's conversation, we're going to talk about people and culture. And, you know, people make up cultures, and people are at the center of those cultures. And what I am seeing, what we, Elizabeth and I have had many conversations, what we see in the industry right now is so much emphasis on technology and automation that it almost is, we see businesses failing, we see organizations struggling. And that's the reality of it. There is such rapid deployment of a lot of good things, but we're stomping all over people and all over cultures in order to make it happen, and it's not sustainable. And so, Elizabeth, I would love to just hear from you. What have you guys done at Altum to really be a people-first organization? I know you embrace technology, you embrace automation, you have those things in your company, but what have you done specifically around how you've structured things to make sure that people are first and foremost in what you are doing?
Well, I don't even know if you know this, but Altum is actually Latin for deep dive. So the word Altum is deep dive in Latin. And we really feel like, you know, technology is great. We have a lot of technology. We have a lot of AI. We use the Vispa solution. We love the Vispa solution. But at the end of the day, there are just things that you need people for. And there are things that are more complex and claims that are more complex, situations are more complex that a bot or a computer is not going to be able to figure out. So we really try to make sure that, what we're selling is really a solution that goes beyond the technology. I think a lot of healthcare providers have gotten burnt by, potentially only having the technology in place and not having that extra deep dive. So that's kind of how we work it in, from a business perspective. From a personal perspective, as a leader, I understand, I've understood for a long time that, my greatest asset is my team. I can go out and I can speak and I can sell and I can do all of the things. But if I don't have a really awesome, solid team behind me, and that goes all the way from my executive team down to, my office admin, like I can't do all the work myself. So really making sure that we have a great team and we invest in that team is super important to me. I think one of the things you and I talked about yesterday was there can be a very large cost to a business when you have a lot of turnover with your people. And I think a lot of people don't always take that into consideration, that there is a training cost and a retention cost and things like that. So we work really hard to get the right people in the right seats and then to keep them there.
I couldn't agree with you more. And, one of the things you talked about, just real briefly, is about leadership and just how important that is and the role that that plays in keeping those cultures alive and vibrant and healthy. And, for the sake of today's conversation, referencing leadership, it's all about influence. That's a John Maxwell thing. He says it's all about influence. I've heard Carly Fiorina say it's all about changing the order of things for the better. And so I like to use that definition. It's influence, changing the order of things for better. And influence really is all about people. And it begins with valuing and believing people. And I think it's hard to have a culture that is people focused if you don't have a value for people and you don't embrace their worth and or believing in them and seeing their potential. And that's one of the things that at Vispa, when it comes to incorporating culture in how we do things with our clients, we look at potential. It's all about potential. And it's focusing on what people can do and not on what they can't do. And I think as organizations, if we can look at our existing teams, and you might be on this call, you might be part of a big team, you might be leading a team, you might be, a sole lone ranger. It doesn't matter. We all have the power to influence, and influence isn't a position. Leadership isn't a position. It is a way of being. It is having that power to influence the people around us. And when I think of really strong teams, I ran across a quote recently where they said, you must see someone else's strength as a complement to your weakness and not a threat to your position or authority. And in most of the organizations that are probably represented on the call today, that's not always an easy thing. There's a lot of political stuff. There's a lot of silos. And Elizabeth, I'm just curious what you have found in your work with organizations and even within your own team. How do you overcome those challenges? How do you overcome the silos and where a culture maybe is siloed? Maybe a culture isn't open and collaborative. How do we overcome those things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, it's top down, right? It starts with us at the top of the list, and what we teach our teams to do and how we teach our teams to interact is going to go all the way down in the organization. So I think I just encourage my leaders to take responsibility for their individual areas. I think I try to coach as opposed to make decisions for them. I think there's a lot of power in allowing people to have ownership of their decisions. I listened to a podcast recently, and they were talking about, like, one of the things that's important when you're leading a team as and overcoming things like this is allowing people to make decisions, allowing people to make mistakes, and understanding that it's going to cost money, which I thought was like a really great thing for me, because I think a lot of times when you sit, in our shoes, you're like, oh, well, I got to control all of these things because, I don't want to spend the money if they mess up. And that was a really eye-opening thing for me to realize, is like, your people are going to make mistakes and it's going to cost money, and that's okay. So I think that, that's one of the things I've really tried to do, and then try to get them to kind of go down to the people that report to them with the same kind of information. And then, we do a lot of collaboration around here. We have, in-person management meetings, daily touch bases. Like, I think things like that, particularly in this post-COVID world where we're not all sitting in an office anymore, are super important to kind of maintaining that culture and that environment, and having everyone kind of be involved and know what's going on. I mean, I have a lot of my management team sitting in on meetings that don't necessarily directly influence them, but I still think it's important for them to understand, the big things that are moving in the business, whether it's their department or not.
Man, I think that is so good. You talk about collaboration, and I think that's certainly at the heart of our culture as well. And I think when it comes to our industry and we think about the tech revolution, that's why what we're kind of talking about today. I mean, people are such an integral part of that. And, there's a quote that I love: success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. And when I think about that, I think about the things that you just touched on. I think about having those ideals in mind of what we want to see happen in our organizations with automation and with AI and with technology, but realizing that people make all of that happen, right? And it's a progressive thing. It's not something that happens overnight. And you also touched on something, Elizabeth, about you mentioned several underlying assumptions, which in my opinion are part of culture. And it's things like empowering your people. It's saying, okay, I'm going to allow you to make a mistake. I'm going to allow you to do what you need to do. And then I'm going to come alongside and help when maybe things don't go the way that they should go. And that's not always easy to do. We want to step in as leaders, and we want to make everything happen, and we want to make all the calls. We want to call the shots. But really, it takes a whole team collaborating together to make the most of what we are doing. And it reminds me of a tool that we use at Vespa called the Working Genius. And the Working Genius is all about identifying the 3 stages of work. Is that, that ideation stage, it's the activation stage, the implementation stage. And all of us on this call have 2 geniuses that we bring to the table, and we fall within those 3 different parts of getting work done. If I try to be all of those things at every meeting, at every project, with every initiative, I am going to fail because we all have 2 geniuses, but we also have a lot of competencies, and we also have frustrations. And if I'm trying to sit in the place of someone else when I should be stepping back and allowing them to be in that seat, I'm probably going to have some trouble in implementing the technologies. So it's a practical example of where culture and people and collaboration is so important. It's not about me, it's about we. It's about our team. It's not about me trying to, make all the shots or call all the shots because I'm the leader. Let's take a step back and let's let other people into the conversation. So, Elizabeth, how have you found that to work in your organization?
So one of the things I always tell, my executive team is I hate job descriptions. I understand for certain, positions, you do have to have descriptions and, expectations and things like that. But one of my favorite exercises that I like to do is to ask them to write their own job description. Tell me what, you want to do. Tell me what you're good at. Of course, we're all going to have to do something that we don't like to do. Like that's life, that's work. Right. But it's been a really interesting exercise every time I've done it. And I've done it, in my previous companies, and I've done it at Altum, because what you tend to find out is, turns out somebody, loves this task that someone else hates. And just being able to kind of shift things around so that people are in their sweet spot just makes the whole team, work so much more efficiently. And like you said, you can't be all things to all people. And there are things that you're really good at, and there are things that other people are really good at. So I really try to make an effort about including people in the process of finding that place for them, finding that job description, finding that role that makes the most sense for them. We also have active conversations with our leaders about what they want to do next. What is the next step for them? What skills are they trying to potentially learn? I had a manager come to me recently and say, I would really like to get more comfortable on calls with clients. And I said, that's awesome. We can start, putting you on some, and then we'll, assign you little agenda items. And then, before you know it, you'll be running one. And so I think that's really also good to have a conversation with people about, what they want next. A good leader is always developing the next good leader. And I always tell my team, like, yes, I want you to stay with me. I always want you to stay with me. But I'm also never going to stand in the way of somebody else, making a leap that's better for them. And I take pride in the fact that, I trained them or I gave them the skills to do that. So I think some companies get really like stuck in the like, oh, well, we don't want to ask them what's next because then they'll leave. And I just feel like that's my responsibility. I actually had a situation with an employee that resigned, and my team wanted me to call her and talk her into staying. And I called her and I asked her why, and she said, I always wanted to be a coder. I always wanted to get certified to code. I said, well, then that's what you need to do. Like, I'm not going to, like, you need to go do that. And, if you don't like it, you can come back. But so I think that just really also helps people feel comfortable that they're allowed to be the best version of themselves, and they're not expected to arrive or to perform in areas that aren't their strong points.
Goodness, I couldn't agree more with you. And I'm so glad that you talked about job descriptions. And, recently we were, I would say in the last 6 months, we were talking about org charts, organizational charts. And, when you take the approach of really finding the sweet spot for the people that are on your team, they don't know, it doesn't always fit into a traditional org chart. It doesn't always make sense. And so on our team, we have a lot of cross-departmental interaction and collaboration. And it's because of exactly what you said. It's because, I know very few, if anybody, and probably most people on this call would agree. I'd love to see your comments in the chat, but I don't think most people fit every part of a job description. And yet we have these organizational structures that require people to fit in this box, whether they truly fit in it or not. And so we're a little bit disruptive in that way, and we don't entirely follow that. And it's part of our philosophy of being both corporate smart and entrepreneur smart. Corporate smart being really excellent in the details and the processes and how we do things, but being entrepreneur smart in the perspective of being more agile, being flexible, allowing people to speak into those job descriptions, speak into who they are, and really, when I'm interviewing people, I'm always asking them, like, what does an ideal position look like for you? What all does it include? What are the things that you just really don't like at all, and you hope that you never have to do them? And of course, we all have things that we have to do from time to time that we don't like, but we should never spend the majority of our time doing the things that we're not really designed to do. And so I think it's having that flexibility to be able to have both that corporate excellence, but also to have the flexibility to be more kind of stick in the mud. I talked to somebody just the other day. He's a VP at a fairly large organization, and he was telling me how he works for like an RCM company. He was talking about how he meets with the PE board that backs their company weekly. And he said, Geneva, all I do is sit and look at spreadsheets all day. He said, I hate it. I am a square peg in a round hole. And I just, made me sad. I'm like, we get one life to live, and we get one shot in life. There are so many different opportunities out there. I would never want anyone on my team, and Elizabeth, I think I hear you say this too, I would never want anyone on my team feel like they are stuck because they have to fill some role or something that they are not created for. I think it's a huge waste of talent. I'm reading a book right now called Hidden Potential. And in there, they talk about Finnish schools and a study that they did in the schools. And one of their mantras is, we're not going to waste any brains. We don't want one brain going to waste. And I'm like, dang, we could learn a lot from taking that model and really seeing the value in people.
Well, I feel a follow-up conversation coming on Hidden Potential because I am also reading Hidden Potential right now. It's a great book. So we might have a follow-up just on that whole book in itself because that's a whole great concept. But I think you know that part of my story is I have been through two PE transactions. I had a very large job at Cognizant, which is an international healthcare company. I was the division president of RCM for North America. And I mean, part of my story, and a lot of people have heard me say this, was that I hated it. I left because I couldn't influence change for my clients, and I couldn't influence change for my employees because everything had to be in the box, in the org chart, in the form. And I get it. Large companies, they have to, come up with that stuff because they're so big, but that doesn't fit with me and my leadership style at all. And that's kind of when I knew, like, I need to do something different, and I can do this better. I can do this same job. I can provide these same results for my clients, but I can do it better for the people that work for me. And then actually, I think that actually turns into better results for your clients, because when you're good to your people, they're good to your clients. They're good to the patients they interact with. They're good to the insurance companies they interact with. So yeah, it's a huge, the square peg round hole thing is actually the whole reason that Altum Healthcare Solutions exist, is not wanting to live in that environment anymore, and just believing there is a different way to do it.
Yes, and there is a different way to do it. I mean, we're both doing it, and in fact, I believe, we've all seen the Change Healthcare debacle here in the past few months, and it's nothing new. There's a lot of that kind of stuff happening right now, and I say all the time, small is the new big. um, there's a lot that you can do in a small, and when I say small, I'm not saying like two people on a team. I'm just saying we're maybe not 1,000 people on our team. um, Small is the new big, and there's a lot that you can do. There's a lot of agility that comes from working with teams that are not huge and that are not siloed and that are not um, difficult to maneuver around with. And so, speaking of PE, um, Elizabeth, when we talk about small is the new big, PE is all about growing and expanding and doing more, right? How much progress do you think actually is happening? We're talking about the tech revolution, but then we're talking about people. So in that tech revolution that we supposedly are seeing happen, how much progress do you think is being made?
That's a really interesting question. I think that there is progress being made, but not in the ways that people believe that it is being made. I think the tech revolution does offer efficiencies. I've been speaking around the country this year on, AI and insurance denials, and how generative AI is completely changing, the insurance denial. And I always start by saying, like, there is a place for this, right? There is a place for it. It does make us more efficient. It does make us make less mistakes. However, you cannot do it at the expense of completely replacing people in the process. So I think that to the extent that people are trying to push it to believe that they can replace people completely, I think we're going backwards. To the extent that there are some parts of it that do give us better technology and better results, then yes, I think we're making progress there. But I hate these conversations. You see these headlines. I think you and I talked about this yesterday. By 2030, 2/3 of people's jobs are going to be done by computers. And I just don't believe that that's sustainable. I mean, at some point, there has to be some amount of thinking or idea generation. I loved when we were talking yesterday, you said computers don't have ideas. And I think that is like by far and away the best way to say it is, computers are not going to be creative. Computers are not going to be malleable. Computers are not going to be flexible. Computers are not going to be able to answer the phone from your client when they've got a really big problem, or like you said, the Change Healthcare solution. There wasn't, computers couldn't fix that. It took people, we literally went back to sending paper claims for the first time in, gosh knows how many years. It took people to print those claims and send them. So I think that that's a really good example of why, like, the technology is great until the technology breaks. And if you don't have people when the technology breaks, then you're really going to be up a creek. So I think it's really, really potentially damaging for companies to rely so heavily on technology and not spend time on, getting the right people and making sure they're supported and mentored along the way.
And I agree with that. One of the challenges, honestly, that we see when we go into organizations as a technology company is that people are comfortable doing what they've always done. And part of what I see in the tech revolution on the people side is that it's the finished model. We don't want to waste a brain. But you know what? Our brains are only as good as what we exercise them. And I see a lot of opportunity for people to grow and expand themselves to do the more heavy lifting, brain heavy jobs that technology can't do. Let technology do the automated processes that really don't require a lot of heavy brain power to do, right? But I think my encouragement, something I'm very passionate about, is growing ourselves as people, as individuals. Like, learn new things, learn new skills, like get great at presenting, get great at problem solving. Whatever it is that is in your hands, get really, really good at doing it. You will never be out of a job. You will never be out of a job. But if you're okay doing what you've always done, that you might get pushed out. And so my encouragement is, hey, let's dig in, let's do the hard work, let's learn new things, let's take ourselves to the next level, right alongside the technology taking our industry forward. We need to take ourselves forward as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a really awesome way, to wrap this discussion up. We're trying to be cognizant of people's time, just doing this 30-minute lunch thing. And I'm so inspired by your leadership, Geneva. And I think this message, especially coming from you as a technology CEO, which I should have started the conversation by mentioning that, so I apologize. I think it's great to hear somebody whose literal company revolves around, technology and AI and all of the things also say, we need the people. And so I thank you so much for joining the conversation today. And I hope everybody, enjoyed our conversation. Obviously, Geneva and I are on LinkedIn and Instagram, so you can look us up if you have any questions or have anything, that you want to run by us. And obviously, altumhs.com. And what's yours, Geneva?
It's vispaflow.com.
Okay. And Vispa is VISPA. So we'd love for you guys to reach out if you have any questions or you want to interact with us, in a greater way. And we hope everyone has a wonderful weekend.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.